The program you're about to see is made possible through the financial support of people like you. We hope you'll join the thousands of people who make our programming possible. Become an In the Life member by clicking on the Donate Now button on our website.
I believe this nation's ready, and I believe it's the civil rights march of our generation.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York is currently leading the charge in the Senate to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. She recently came to In the Life to hear from two service members discharged under the policy. David Hall, a former enlisted man and an officer cadet in the Air Force, and Julianne Sohn, a former Marine officer who served in Iraq.
How did you become an advocate for repeal?
Well, it was one soldier's story. I sat down with Lieutenant Dan Choi. You know, I always thought Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a terrible policy, but I didn't really understand how terrible it was until I heard from him how it affected his life. And when he shared with me that, you know, the military teaches you to be honest, to have integrity and character, except when it comes to this policy. This policy demands that you lie every day about who you are. And he said, you know, Kirsten, I'm tired of lying every day. I'm tired of not being able to tell my colleagues, my commanding officer, you know, who I love, what's important to me, and who I am. And he said, you know, the worst is when I am deployed and everyone around me gets to kiss their loved ones goodbye, I don't. And I thought, oh, what an awful, awful policy. And how would I feel if I couldn't tell my colleagues about my beautiful children and my husband? So I thought I have to do something about it, and I looked into it, and I saw that no legislation was going to be moving this year. So I wrote a bill, and I counted my votes, and I didn't get to 60, but I got very, very close. And so I spoke to Chairman Levin, and I said, you know, can you hold a hearing? Because of the undecideds, they either wanted leadership from the president or leadership from the military. And I thought if we had a hearing, we could develop that testimony. And sure enough, we did. And that was the beginning of being able to repeal this horrific policy.
Senator, you know, we're waiting for the Senate vote, but even when we do get that vote, we know we still have a lot of hurdles to get through. We have to, one, wait for the Pentagon study to get done.
You know, the military's asked for their ability to do a study over the year so they know how to implement. And they need to focus on, you know, exactly the steps that will be taken to implement this policy. So we have one standard of conduct to make sure that the rules are very clear, and then just put out, you know, processes and procedures so people know what to follow. They'll have their year. The report is due December 1. We hope to get the vote on the Armed Services Bill in September. So by the end of this year, we'll repeal the policy. And, you know, they can do their survey if that helps them. Fair enough. But the real prize is repeal. Both of you have an extraordinary record of service to this country and enormous passion, and you both have individual stories that I'd love if you could tell us. How did this policy affect you?
I actually knew going in that I was gay. My Marines would tell me about their weekends, and I would have to just say something vague. I had a partner at the time, and I found it that I had to live about an hour away from base so that we could have our own life.
Yeah.
I actually had a close call where my legal officer told me, hey, you know, there are rumors going around about you. And I decided to just leave active duty and go to grad school. So I actually left active duty, but then I got called back to serve in Iraq. And it was at serving there in Iraq while, you know, my partner was back at home, and, you know, she couldn't, you know, we couldn't contact each other in a formal way. Like, we had code, like when we'd write letters, instead of saying love, we'd say, like, take care, or something really vague, like she was my friend, you know, and roommate. And so it was really hard. And I made the decision coming back from Iraq to actually just share my story of what it was like to serve under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And so the military created a case using like newspaper clippings and stuff about me just telling my story about just what it was like to serve. And before I knew it, I got a phone call, casual phone call, just saying, hey, you are being investigated for violating the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. And they read me my rights. So I felt like I had committed a crime by just loving somebody, you know. And so by 2008, I was discharged.
It's very painful and so awful. And I can't imagine what it'd be like to have to live under those conditions. Can you tell us about your story?
I followed in the footsteps of my dad and stepdad. They both served 20 years in the Air Force, so I grew up a military brat, grew up around the Air Force. At my 5-year mark, the Air Force decided to let me out to go Air Force RGC so that I could, become an officer. At that time, everything was going great for me. I was ranked #1 in my class.
Wow.
I had just got my pilot slot and was looking like I would probably be the first cadet, in this brand new detachment to probably become a pilot. I went to field training for the summer, and the day that I got back, I got called in. There was a JAG for the military waiting to talk to me, and he sat me down and said, a female cadet has come forward and said that you're gay, that you're in a relationship with another cadet. I just kept saying, I have no comment, I have no comment.
Right.
It was about a week before the semester started. I got called into my commander's office, and he sat me down pretty much at a table just like this, slid a piece of paper across to me and said, well, unfortunately, I'm going to disenroll you due to homosexual conduct. And that's on the paperwork. It says no longer meets military standards due to homosexual conduct. And to lose that, just based off of what one person said, was crazy.
Do you hope to serve again once we repeal this policy?
I do, yeah. I was, the Air Force was, I had planned on doing 20 years, so I would definitely.
And you too?
I definitely, part of the reason why I went into LAPD is it actually kind of helped out with what I was doing in the Marine Corps too.
So it enhances your capabilities.
Yes.
Well, I just want to thank you both for your courage. Because you're sharing your story, it allows other people around this country to understand these are real lives that are affected. It's easy to vote against something if it's not personalized. And what your stories do is it puts a real face on the horrible nature of this policy and how undermining it is to the military readiness of armed services. We need you in our military. We need all of our best and brightest serving. Our whole values rest on people like you who are willing to give their lives and sacrifice everything. So I just want to again thank you for your service and thank you for being so strong and courageous and sharing your story.
And thank you so much for being such an advocate and defender for what's right. And we need more leaders like you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.